Alright, so this is my review of the Musha Samurai Special Genko Hanei Handmade Katana Sword. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Also, I find it kind of funny that they say katana sword because the literal translation of katana is sword, but I digress. The very short version of this review is that the sword has an insane amount of value for price. I bought the sword from TrueSwords.com, and if you've ever been to that site or just seen that site, you might think that the site contains a lot of stainless steel wall hanger crap. And you'd be right. But I'm not here to judge their business model, and I know that there's a market for people who would rather have something that looks cool than that is a feasible weapon. What I am here to talk about is that if you can look past all those stainless steel swords, you'll actually find a few good swords that are properly made and sold at a fairly competitive price. This sword I am reviewing specifically is a very competitive beginner's katana and is perfect if you're like me and would like to own a katana but either can't afford it or just don't want to spend over $100 for one. I am personally not very interested in katanas myself, but I did just want to own one to see what it would be like. And for the most part, I actually can't recommend this enough. There's a few timestamps if you'd like to jump to a desired part, but without further ado, let's start this review. The construction of the sword. This is the part that really shines. When I review things, I want to review them at the price that they're worth. That means that since this sword was only $49, I didn't have much hope for it. Once it finally showed up, finally showing up being the key part because there was a big mess when it came to shipping, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. When it finally showed up, I was actually very impressed with what I saw. The first thing I noticed was the edge. It had one. If you're new to swords or just don't know anything about collecting European style swords, more often than not, the sword will come dull. Now the edge they gave it isn't the greatest edge, but it's still better than nothing. The steel they used for it is 1045 high carbon steel, which is very common for lower end swords. I'm pretty sure that they machine cut steel blanks, then shape them out, which means that compared to a traditionally made differential hardened blade, it will not have a Hamid line. Which is not a bad thing in my opinion, considering the price. And I know that there's a lot of sword elitists out there, for lack of a better term, that would say that 1045 is bad and might even go to saying that it's basically wall hanger steel. But for the most part, I don't think it's that bad. If anything, it dulls quicker, and if tempered improperly, it might break, but that only happens once in a blue moon. So upon further inspection, I also immediately realized that the little metal locket thing that was glued on the end of the saya is loose. Does that suck? Yeah. Is it a big deal? No, not at all. I glued it back into place once I was done getting all the info for this review, so I don't think it'll be coming loose anytime soon. You also have to keep in mind that I only paid $49 for a sword, a functional one at that. It's very surprising that it would keep up with other competition for the most part at this price. So all in all, it's not bad. One thing I found interesting is I never knew how tough it was to get a katana out of its saya until now. I don't know if this is just a common thing or if it's just this one because I don't own many katanas. But I found out that, you could get it open relatively easy from doing the little thumb pop thing that I usually see in like video games or anime or something like that. So that's funny. Besides all that, it has a nice lacquered saya, and the fittings, which include the tsuba, manukis, cord wrap, end cap, and the saya locket, are all made out of cast iron, which looks very good in my opinion. I actually prefer the glossy look on most sayas, but I'm not complaining at all considering the price. One problem I do have though is that there's a small crack on the saya. Now, I don't know if this was me that did it or if it was already there, but the way it usually goes with wood is that a small crack leads to a big crack, and I'm just going to have to be extra careful with it from now on. As for the historical accuracy for the whole sword, I can't say that I know much considering that I'm nowhere near an expert, but from the little I do know, it looks pretty correct. Most budget swords like to put both manukis basically back to back on the handle, creating a big lump on the grip, which messes up with the handling. Musha instead strategically placed them where when you wear the katana the traditional way, with the curve up, the saya's adornments are shown. The front manuki is shown closest to the tsuba. The other manuki is at the end of the suka, or the handle, so that when your body is turned you can still see a bit of the adornments. I'm surprised that a sword this cheap had that much thought put into it, but considering that the Musha katana line is just a divergent of Musashi and that Musashi makes pretty good katanas, this makes some sense. As for how it feels, I'd say it's pretty good. It feels as heavy as a longsword, but not as long, and from what I understand it's supposed to be that way because a katana is a two-handed weapon. It also makes sense considering how rigid the spine of the blade is and how it has a lot more metal on it. That being said, it's very blade heavy. I measured the point of balance and it was about 6 inches out. Considering the blade is about 28 inches from what I measured, which roughly corresponds with what I saw on the store page, this just shows how cut-orientated this sword is. I think that will definitely show when I show you someone who's literally had no katana training at all, me, try to do some cutting tests. On to the cutting test disclaimer. I don't have much space to swing, so it is what it is. If I can give you a general idea of the sword's potential to you guys though, great. I'm definitely not going to be practicing here anymore though, because it'll just instill bad habits and the such. Also, like I said earlier, I've never practiced kendo, kenjutsu, aido, or anything of that sort. I recently joined a HEMA club though, and I have learned a few things from them, but I filmed this a while ago and just never gotten around to making this video until now. But with all that being said, let's begin. For my cutting targets, I use silk newspaper rolls. If you saw my other video, you'll probably recognize these. This one was interesting because if you saw at the beginning, I couldn't fit it onto the dowel, so I just kind of propped it up and just swatted at it. It kind of worked. I cut a piece off of it. As you can see here, the sword held up really well. I hit this dowel head on and it didn't even do any damage to the sword, so. And here's the sharpness of the sword after all the tests and everything like that, a little while after. And this is also the factory edge, so it's relatively okay. Definitely could use some more sharpening, but it's not bad. As for my final thoughts, I think this sword is great for the price. It may just be that I got very lucky, but seeing all the reviews that were left on True Swords, I knew that this just happens to be one of the really good deals out there. It might not be the greatest, but it's sure worth a look if you want a cheap, functional sword for yourself. Quick disclaimer though, I got this sword for something around $49 because this site usually has some sort of free shipping on blah blah blah, so it means that their asking price is just about that. If you currently don't see the free shipping special on the top left of the website, it's probably because they're not doing it that day, but I guarantee you that they'll be doing it again very soon. They almost reset them daily, so I'd just keep an eye out for it if that's what you want. Now the free shipping is great and all, but good lord was it a nightmare. It almost took a month for it to get to me, and to make matters worse, they had some sort of convoluted system where FedEx takes the package, then gives it to USPS, and then they have to come to my house at the most inopportune time, and I missed them like 4 times, and then they finally left the damn thing at my doorstep. If you go through all that trouble like I did, then I'd say it's worth it. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else left to say. If you have any sort of questions, comments, concerns, prophecies, feel free to leave a comment. I'll most likely be reading them, and I'll probably respond so long as you're courteous enough. But other than that, I hope this helped you in some sort of way, and I hope you have a nice day. Peace.